Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Itzli-Ra, the podcast where we talk about all things related to spirituality, enlightenment, and
everyday life.
I am Carlos.
And I'm Veronica.
Yeah, we're kicking off season 2, which is amazing. Woohoo! Let's go. And our first guests on season 2 are Jason and Melody. Yay. What's up, guys? How are you?
Yes, Happy New Year.
Nice to
Yeah, and I'm super excited to get into this topic because when I heard Veronica was saying that you guys were doing not only like what was it called, that surgery, crystal surgery, but you guys were also doing extractions. I'm like, man, we gotta talk more about what that actually is, right? So, but first, I kind of want to get a little bit of your guys's, like, how did you guys get into this? Like, did you guys did you guys have gifts from the very beginning? Did you guys see spirits? And then, how did that happen? Did you learn from other people? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, his story is much cooler than mine. So we'll save him for a second.
Mine's going to take the whole
episode. Go ahead. For me, I grew up in like a Latin American family. So there was always to talk about like the duendes, the ghosts, the spirits. So that was in the background, but I was never a believer. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't believe in God, even though we had seen really crazy stuff as a kid. The mind just kind of like blocks it because it's not ready. And I remember my sister Jade, we were hired. She taught me how to do pranic healing for the first time, which is kind of like a energy cleaning, kind of like Reiki. And she was like, I'm going to teach you how to do energy cleaning. And I'm like, what is this? I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna pretend that I don't know. I was just so confused. And she was like, you need to go like this, put your hands, feel the energy. And I'm like, this is bogus. I'm like, I don't know what she's doing, but from the bottom of my heart, I hope this helps that person. So I was very stubborn. So that's why people that come that are like very like non-believers, or what's like the word for it? Skeptics.
Yes.
Like the ones that like we have like husbands who come and they're like, this is all witchcraft, and they're all like grumpy with their arms crossed. They're my favorite because I get it. I understand where they're coming from. But my mom and my sister have always been very spiritual. So I was always surrounded by that. I think I was just really fearful to even, go deep in that. And it wasn't until my sister taught me and I started helping people with her that at first I was like, man, what a coincidence. Something would fly across the room. Oh, my imagination. I would be like, how does my sister know something so specific about a person she's never met? I'm like, there must be some logic behind this. And it wasn't until we got hired to clean a business. This was like after 2 months of helping clean people and seeing and hearing stuff that I was like, that's kind of weird. I remember we moved this giant plant because my sister's like, whatever is in this building that they want us to clean, it's going to tell us what it wants. So we can like, get rid of this. And at that point, I was like, you know what? No questions asked. I've seen her read people in a scary way. So I was like, I'm not going to question her. I'm just going to do it. And so I remember grabbing this heavy plant, and it was like healthy, like a baby plant. And she like grabs it with me and we put it next to the bathroom. And I have a piece of paper because I will never forget the visual. She maybe like 6 feet away from us was like the door that was where we put the plant next to. And I was back there with my sister just looking at this plant. And she's like, hey, keep looking at the plant. Whatever is here is going to tell us what it wants. And I just remember kind of being like, okay. And I look like waiting for something, like what's supposed to happen 3 seconds in. And this plant had like 2 branches that were coming like to the side because it was like branches going up. And I just remembered when she told me keep looking, she's like, don't worry, just keep looking. The 2 sides of the branch just get hold on their own until they touch the ground. And I remember for half a second, I was still trying to piece logic. And I'm like, well, there was no natural disaster. There wasn't a person. It wasn't the AC. It was not a dying plant. And it wasn't up until that moment that after like a second, something just broke in my mind. And I was like, there is no logic to what I just saw. It literally just like looked like somebody grabbed them and bent them to the ground. And I will never forget. my legs turned to like jelly. And I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? And I was yelling like crazy. And Jason was in the front of this business with like the business owners and my mom. He comes running thinking like something is happening to me. And I remember I'm like, my heart is palpitating. I feel like I'm having a panic attack in my legs. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And my sister's like, it's okay, it's okay. And that was the first time, even though my mom does not like hearing me say this, but it wasn't until I was 27 when that happened that I believed in like a higher power for the first time. And
Wow.
after that, when I realized like, hey, there is something higher, I don't know what to call it. I say God because that's what I grew up with. Just more stuff started coming out and reading people and helping people. And now I'm like, whatever about it. Now it's like something I accept is a part of life. So I've had like stuff thrown at me when I'm like cleaning people. Like I've had like stuff, socks, popsicle sticks thrown at me. But it's no longer frightening. So I'm just like, I'm in a good place.
I think that's the interesting thing about your gifts as you use them. Like the first time, it seems like you're like, oh my God, oh what? And you get all excited about it and everything. And I could do the things. But then after you just becomes a normal part of you and who you are, it doesn't seem like you don't get that level of excitement. I think.
I get excited every time. I'm not
Do
gonna lie.
you?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, I started off from like, this is not real. Like it's not bogus, but I was like, this is let whatever people do what they want. It's not my thing. To like, I was really stubborn, right? I'm a Taurus. To like having experiencing this and being like, wow, I can't turn away from it anymore. And then kind of like once you like embrace it and accept it, for me, that's why it's exciting because it's just a reminder of every time I help somebody or something weird happens or we're reading people and I'm like, I don't know how I know that. I'm like, what is going on? It brings joy and excitement to me because it just helps me continue that belief that hey,
Uh,
there is something higher. Because human beings we go up and down.
right. So it's like a fulfillment. You feel fulfilled because you're helping.
They're helping me too. Like we're helping each other. So I always get so excited. I'm always like in awe.
I
Yeah.
think like when we no longer resist, right? It just we become the open channel and it just flows,
Yeah.
right? Because once we when we're early on, sometimes we can be a little resistance and it's like, okay, I'm showing you, okay, I'm showing you, and then boom, I'm showing you. And then
Yeah.
you're just like, wait a minute, you
Down.
know, our thinking, our logic is like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And then sometimes, it could have like some kind of a church upbringing that no, this is not
Mhm.
right. And so all those things are at war in our mind. But then when we finally surrender, that's where like we flourish and and then all of a sudden just all these things start opening up. But it takes that, right? It takes that sometimes to be able to question things, to really be secure in what we kind of understand now, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I was quite stubborn, so it took some time. Even after a bunch of things I experienced, I was like, my favorite word to use was, "Oh, that was weird. Oh, what a coincidence."
Quickening.
What else? That's interesting.
Quinketing. That's a quinketing.
That's interesting.
I would be like, that's weird because my mind still had like a hard time like embracing, like you said, and kind of like opening up. So
Mm.
and that's why the people that I meet that are like, well, all of this, they come in all grumpy and stuff. They're my favorite kind. Because I understand. I think it's just a lot of fear, right? With like the unknown and like even if there's no religious trauma, it's kind of like, or at least for me, like you go to school, you learn that what's real is in a book and what's been
Mm.
studied and researched. So the brain, the logic kind of is like, well, this is unknown, right? So I don't want to, it's, yeah, at least for me.
Yeah, our brain not having a frame of reference and it's trying to figure it out. It's going back and forth and all its files and it's like, what's this?
I've
So
never
then I was
seen this
like,
before. I don't know.
And you hear
it's
it from
weird.
other people too, right? Like imagine my mom and my sister were always spiritual. And my mom has been doing spiritual work for 40 years. And I saw when clients would come and I would see like from people tell me like, oh my God, your mom helped me with this and that. like a lady that was like 45 years old, like my mom helped her get pregnant naturally, you know? So there were these things that were not logical, but even then, having that, I really think it takes, at the end of the day, you can hear as many people as you want to or read as many things as you want to. But when you're ready to like embrace it, you'll experience it yourself. And that's when like the real journey begins because you have proven it to yourself. Like you experienced it yourself. So learning and hearing is kind of gearing up for when you're actually ready to like embrace it and actually be in that world. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right.
Jason, I
Yeah,
can't wait to
Jason.
hear your story again.
I'll keep my story. So I'll tell you a little bit of my background first. So I'm from South Korea, and religious wise, I grew up till age 10, like atheist. My dad did not force like God or anything like that, and I just kind of grew up whatever. And then my grandma on my mother's side was taking me to like Buddhist temples when I was like 3 or 4, just being woken up at 6:30 in the morning, walking up on like 1,000 steps and bowing down to the Buddha statue like 100 times. And I remember that. After that, Christianity, my dad was enforcing that a lot after we moved to US. And yeah, I mean, what we do now till this day, my parents does not like hearing about it. It's very taboo, right?
Mm.
he's
I-
super Christian.
Yeah, super Christian. But you know what?
Yeah.
I believe in God and I do this too. We're all the same. We just have different names for it. So that's what I believe in.
And he was a
And
pastor too. So just to give you context, like
Oh,
his
oh,
son's a pastor and his
Ah.
wife's a deacon. So
Yeah.
they're like, and Koreans with like church, they're like,
yeah, we
they're
don't mess with
hardcore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oof.
But if I can tell you
Yeah.
one thing, my grandpa, my dad, me, we all have strong words of manifestation. We
Mm.
we work in prayers, so at least I have that genetically, spiritually. But most of the actual spiritual work, I believe that I got it from my grandma, who's still
Mhm.
alive, Korea. She has dementia now, but um, her spiritual work was more like shamanism back in the day. I'm talking about, what is this, 70s or late 60s. My grandma's been doing this. She worked with knives. So she would cut any evil spirits that's attached to people, and she would cut them with knives by dancing. She would have bells on her wrists, on her ankles, and then the sound of the knives clanking with each other and the bells would supposedly derive all the evil spirits that will come. So she did that for many years, and she did that for kind of supporting her family, and she did it for like almost 10 years. And then after that, it was like, we don't talk about it, job is a job that she did, but this is very taboo. I don't want to, have any superstitious stuff. So we didn't talk about it till the day I turned 27. Boy, everything changed. I
It's like,
was, I still remember it was like maybe 2 or 3 months after my birthday. I was going to drop off some paperwork. I work as a nurse. So back in the day, everything is electronic now, but I would have to turn in paperwork to get paid, my hours, my notes and stuff. So I would always go. One time I go in there and it's just like an office outside of the building. And I go there 11, 12 at night. Why? Because I don't want to, fight with traffic. So I'm going over there. And as I was walking in, I remember seeing a lady and she was in front of the door. She looked homeless. So I was like, okay, she doesn't look like she belongs there. I have to call my company, call security, whatever. She goes behind the building where I can't see. So I practically ran over there to see where she was going because I was on the phone with my company. And as she's turned around, I literally probably went there like 4 seconds after. And I turned to the hallway where she went and like she was gone. So I was like, okay. You just see walls like 8 feet tall. And I'm just like, yeah, she didn't go over there. Maybe she's hiding. So I'm like, whatever. I call security. I'm turning in my documents work, and I remember it's just big tempered glass door. And I see her walking inside in the dark. And I'm like, how did she get in there? You know? So I'm going inside like this, looking through the window to see where she's going. And I remember she was walking very slowly. And then she just turned her head really quickly onto the left to see and lock eyes with me. And as soon as she locked eyes, my body just froze in this state right here, looking through the glass. Um, I was just,
Were you
I
scared? Were you scared, dude? Was it like
couldn't scared. I was more like frozen, more
mhm, mhm.
like I couldn't move anything. Only thing I could move were my eyes. And I'm seeing her, and while she's has her head turned like this, all she does is just turn her body straight forward and starts walking towards me. And she's like not even 12 feet away from me. And then I started to get scared. Like if she's coming this way, it's like watching a slow movie, horror movies coming towards you. And then the more she stepped, every step just felt so, if I can describe it, cold.
Uh-huh.
And then she would just walk. And then when she got close, I realized she wasn't walking. She was just hovering.
Oh.
And until the point she came maybe like 3 feet away, I could see her eyes. I could see all the features. And she got up to like maybe this close to my face. And she kind of paused in there. And then she just went through my face to face, eyes to eye, nose to nose, mouth to mouth. Everything was connected.
She went right through you?
Yeah. And when she passed through me, this feeling was when people call it bone chilling,
Uh-huh.
like somebody turned on the AC inside your bone marrow. It felt like that. And I woke up. I had tunnel vision when she was getting close. I think I fainted. Up on the ground, I pissed my pants, and I'm like, what happened? And all I see is just that one spot where I had my hand like this. There was nothing. It was just you can see through it, but everything was icicles around, like frozen. Only this part, and right in the middle there was a handprint.
Oh shit!
And I got scared. I was like, I'm getting out of here. So I got in my car. I go. I talked to her, and she's like, I think you're just, maybe, you should talk to my mom.
Because he was panicking. He's like, damn, like, is stress getting to me? Am I schizophrenic? And it doesn't run in his family. The symptoms weren't there. And I tell this to people because we've been together for like 8 years now. Yeah. And I'm sorry to say this, but he's not that creative. So when he was telling me the story, all of these details, I'm like, oh, like this doesn't sound like a lie. This is like too detailed for him. Like he didn't used to be a great storyteller. And that's why I'm like, hey, you need to go see my mom because there's something here that I wasn't a spiritual back then, but I was like, I don't know what's going on, but my mom might help.
Yeah. And then I talked to her, and she just like, oh, this guy, you're just starting. You're just what did she tell me? Just you need to ground yourself, to close your third eye. And I was freaking out because it was always open. I was hearing things, seeing things.
The freeway. Tell them about the freeway.
I had to take the freeway to go to work. And it was the toughest thing because you're merging inside the freeway, but my third eye is open. I didn't know how to control it back then. I didn't know how to open or close. Just there are a lot of people who die on freeways in like car accidents, and some people don't know they passed away. So you see them on the right side where you pull over. They're just lost. Sometimes it's just floating torsos, arms, legs, even just heads. And as I was just going, and I'm going like 60 miles, 30, 70 miles per hour, you just see thumbs like this passing. They're all trying to catch a ride because they're like, they think they got lost.
Oh, man.
Ditched on the freeway. So they're like, help me. And it happened every time at nighttime. And I would have to go drop off my paperwork. I would see them on the freeways. So yeah, that's one. And
when you went back.
And then when I was going back, the same lady that I saw was still there. I saw her like 3 times. Um, I wouldn't see her when I got there, but I would see her when I was leaving. She would be
Hmm.
in front of that same door, just watching me go. And I could feel her gaze sometimes when I don't even look because I don't want to look. I'm scared. And one day I was just, I don't like going there. So I'm like trying to hurry up, right? As I was driving, I I felt like something was behind me and I'm driving and I look into my mirror and she was sitting in the back seat. And I was like, holy crap,
Bro.
I'm gonna bring this lady to my home, you know. So
Oy.
I just e-brake in the middle of the street. Thank goodness it's like 12, so there's nobody driving. I looked in the mirror, I was like, please leave me alone. Like what you're doing is tormenting me. She just didn't move. All she did was just touch my shoulders, tunnel vision. I wake up, I'm in an old 70s car and I'm driving. And I'm going 60, 70, 85, 100. Um, braking on the brakes, nothing. Accelerate, nothing. E-brake, nothing. The car is just going, going, going. And then there was an impact. I open my eyes again. I'm maybe like 30 feet in the air. I see the car. It's literally sandwiched. There's blood pouring out on the side. Um, and I'm confused. I look to my right. Same lady. She's floating right beside me. And she
Mm.
looked at me same way, except this time it was like the saddest face I have ever seen in my entire life. Woke up and I'm still driving. My car was on and my foot was all the way down on the brake. And never saw her after that. And that was it.
Interesting. So she basically showed you her
Yep.
death.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was probably, wanted to help her go, to the next part. But at the same time, I never saw her after that. It was
Hmm.
just maybe she just wanted somebody to know that I passed away like that.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. And then after
Even
that, it just didn't stop. And then, you know, I met her family. They were doing spiritual work. They said, you need to come in. I was doing Reiki. I was doing, it's like cord cutting in a way,
Hmm.
but now I do it in a different technique where I work in forgiveness cord cutting. So what that works is like sometimes, people have attachments, but people have attachment to other people. Um, from my experience in the last years, a lot of people have cores within family. I'm talking
Hmm.
youth in every kind of way, partners, ex-partners, in-laws. It really doesn't matter. But sometimes, like even if you don't meet that person or talk to that person anymore, you still have that core attached to them.
Hmm.
And then I come in to say, you're asking them for forgiveness so they can forgive you, vice versa. So you don't have to like carry any burdens.
So he works a lot with forgiveness.
Yeah.
But a funny thing, so that's why he does like the heavy duty because a lot of like the heavier traumas he ends up helping or like cord cutting or when we were with like my mom and my sister when the clients would come in and they would be really heavy or they had spirits, my mom would just throw Jason and be like, it's you. Like, I'm
You're
not
like,
doing
damn
it.
it. Have to come
So
in here
that's
again.
yeah. So that was starting to like train him to be able to like handle like the heavy stuff.
Ah,
He
got it.
because like when we're working together, like we're cleaning, right? And I'm scanning down the body. And so when I feel there's like a cord or like an entity that has to be removed, I'm like, here, I was like, Jason, go, go. So he just takes it out and I'm just like praying behind him, just cleaning underneath. So
She feels him and then I locate it right after and then it just comes out so naturally. It's hard to explain.
and I'm just like praying, like that's what I can do as he takes him off. I'm like,
Yeah.
the archangel spirit guide. I was like, Elohim.
And I go, did you hear that? Did you see that? And
We're
I was
like,
like, yeah.
or like the wind, like we feel the wind stuff right leaving. So I'm always like, you felt that too. So
So how did
it's
I'm
amazing.
curious. Go ahead, Veronica. You were going to say something.
I said it's amazing that how you guys found each other, right? You know what I'm saying? And then how you were very similar with the thoughts, right, of this not existing and things like that. And then you each had your your break at set 27, which
Your
is the Saturn
awakening.
return, right? The Saturn return, what they say where we make the choice of which direction we're going to go. And having both historical lineages of, these healers, and I think they're called the female shamans in Korea are Mudang, something like that. Mudang. Yeah, I learned about them and how powerful they were, but how they had to practice in secrecy because it wasn't looked kindly upon back then in Korea. So I'm sure your grandmother went through
She
a
went to
lot of stuff, and I'm sure she probably had her own initiation for you, right, when you were little.
she used to read like rice. She would throw rice on the table.
Mhm.
Your grandma did beans. She did beans. So.
Yeah.
My mom's
Yeah, see, yeah, it's such a fascinating thing how cross culturally, right? We there's so much similarity
You know what
with
the
both.
beans and rice are called in like Latin America or in Guatemala?
What?
What are they called?
I like give me heart. They call it casamiento.
Really?
Rice because they're always together and like every
They are
night.
always together.
They
Your
call it
beans
casamientos.
and rice, y'all.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're called wedding for those that don't speak Spanish. They're called like wedding.
I find it I
Yeah.
find it really fascinating with your grandmother, right? I mean, when you think about the idea of across all cultures, right? There's frequency and sound that plays a huge part in vibration, that plays a huge part in spirituality and how you remove spirits. And the interesting thing was that she used knives to like cord cut almost, right? Or the sound of the knives or the metal. I mean, so there's a lot that has to play there, but there are so many similarities in all of these different cultures that use something like that. So it's always awesome to hear, another culture and how they practiced or how your grandma practiced and what she did and how she helped people, because that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be how to help people. I'm sure there's other, practices that are a little more dark or a little more, in a different realm that are more harmful, but it's awesome to hear that, you come from a lineage of people that want to help.
Yeah,
Which is cool.
all tapped in. It's just using the environment and your country traditions, and there you go. We're all very similar in a way.
Mm-hmm. So
And I think it's also
go ahead,
helpful
Veronica.
to, sorry, Carlos,
No,
it's
no.
also helpful to normalize this for our listeners that sometimes this sometimes exists in us. And, it can be scary in the beginning when you're first being cracked open, right? And that's what we want this podcast is to be able to have a space to be able to come in and understand and learn and maybe say, oh my gosh, okay, I had this similar experience. This is what I did, like you guys did, to be able to help, and being able to understand and not hate it, right?
Yeah.
And
Embrace it.
not get taken by it either, and finding a balance with those things.
I think it grounds us, at least like we've like talked about. Because I had suffer from like severe anxiety and panic for like 2020 to 2023, 2024. So I was always anxious or having panic attacks. But it wasn't until the first couple of times where I was doing cleanings with my sister back then when I was like, what is this? That for some reason, in those moments, I never thought, because if you have panic attack or anxiety, you're constantly thinking of like, I don't want to get anxiety, I don't want to get panic. So your brain, if it's severe, like it kind of like spirals throughout the whole day. But I remember when I would clean with my sister, I never had those thoughts at all. For like that 1 hour that I was cleaning, I forgot about it. I wasn't anxious. I didn't have any like tension. And so that's why I continued to do it, because I was very curious of like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is real. But I'm like, but something about this is kind of helping. And I didn't understand until I learned what it was to stay in the body, right? I think I've mentioned that before in the podcast of like being in your body and not being out here. That was when I first, after I heard my spirit guide for the first time. I remember Jason and we were in the room. And sometimes people are kind of used to not being in their body, so they don't really know they're out. But we had just finished an argument and I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like I was in like a really bad mood and I was starting to just kind of like mentally kind of like dwindle. And I just remember Jason was trying to talk to me and I could hear him, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. And I was like, I felt dumb. I was like, what? I'm like, what are you saying? And then my vision started to get really blurry. And it was like out of nowhere. I was just sitting there and I was started like drifting away and I couldn't see anything. And he was talking to me and I'm like, what? What? I had a hard time concentrating. And then I hear my spirit guide say, go back to your body. And I just remember like gasping. And then I like looked around because I had only heard them one time, like a month before. So this was still very new because I was like, man, did I imagine that? And as soon as I was brought in back into my body, the whole color of everything returned and I could understand what he was saying. And that was the first conscious lesson that I had about staying in my body,
Hmm.
but being grounded. So
Yeah.
So Jason, how did you, I'm curious about the extraction. Like, how did you learn how to actually do that? Was that through her mom or did you just know innately that this was something that you could do?
So funny thing is that after I embraced the spirituality and I was putting in work, maybe a year after, then I found out that my grandma was a shaman.
Ah, that's okay.
My mom, she, bless her, but she does not like talking about this. It's because she's, going to church.
Hmm.
But she told me one time, long time ago, which she will never repeat this again. But when she turned 28, or could be 27, but I'm sure it was 28, she had the same thing as me. She was hearing things, seeing things.
Mhm.
She couldn't sleep, panic attacks all night. She couldn't even go to work. So she obviously told my grandma, hey, I don't want this. Take it away from me. And then it was taken away. And when I started having this, I remember I was talking to my mom too about it. And my mom's like, oh, you're stressed, you're stressed from work, you're not getting good sleep. So just all you need to do is that. Um, but how I started is more like a little bit of everything. It was almost like an innate uh, feeling, and I could feel it when I'm working on a person, and they're just like they're more attracted to where I have to be, where I have to place my hands, and they just kind of follow through where I'm leading them to.
the spirits.
The spirits, attachments, I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Energy, spirit, attachment. Yeah.
And then I just kind of grasp them and I take it out and I just kind of put them in the areas and like go to the sun, get sanctified by the sun, the heat, the energy, and then disperse into positive prana energy, rain down.
Mhm.
I always say that. So I don't know. It's just been doing that, and then now I'm like having more other abilities to do things, same thing, but more like different techniques. Still using my hand, but I work also in like forgiveness prayers. I also have my own personal prayers for people that
Mhm.
come, um, but it's just like more like heart to heart, soul to soul. Um, but yeah, it's just how I work.
Because he did use knives in the beginning. So
Yeah.
it was like a cool,
I used to use knives until they kept breaking on me.
like
Yeah.
black obsidian. You
Yeah.
know, those like crystal,
Mhm.
not
Oh yeah,
selenite, but
the obsidian knives. Yeah.
I'll let you know. I used the obsidian knife one day. I had 20 people in San Diego when we were at the expos. Um, we were packing up, and yeah, we were ready to go until somebody came to me and they're like, "Stop, stop! My wife was here, and I want to have a cord cutting. Please don't go." If somebody says that, like I'm dropping off everything, I'm like, "Please sit." You know. I was working on it, and I took extra time to help him because he was heavy. And I remember I was using the knife, and then when I was going past his maybe crown right here, the head, it was like like the phone was vibrating. The knife
Mhm.
that I was holding was vibrating very, very, very softly. And as I was passing by his third eye, it started shaking like violently, and it felt like it was like I don't know how to explain it. Like it was vibrating.
Yeah.
And then as I was done crossing his head, next thing you know, it's just like the knife just breaks in half
Mhm.
right in the middle, and it's obsidian. It hits him right on the head, like the, and then it goes, and then it lands right in front of his feet, right between where his 2 feet were on his shoes, and like marbles on the stone and everywhere across the ground. He was freaking out. And I was like, it's okay, it's okay. I had to pick up all the pieces, put them in the dirt. But after that, it's just like every time I use a crystal, they either break or they get really brittle or they get really dark. Like
Mhm.
selenite, it would get like somebody put like coconut oil. It's just, I don't know. So and I started working with my hands, and yeah, it's just been working out for me.
But he puts gloves on now, right?
Oh yeah, and I have to put gloves on now because when I have like a physical touch with somebody, I feel their abuse, I
Mm-hmm.
feel their emotions, I feel some things that I can't really explain. I only do that when I am like really trying to help people, but also like for my self protection, I also have to put it on so I can be okay at the end of the day.
So say,
Do,
if he
do you
touches you,
usually say a prayer before you put your gloves on and get, so there's some people do ritual or like say a protective prayer or
All
to
in
be
other
able to
energies, things like that.
to be able
Yeah.
to be heightened enough whenever you're going into a work like that.
Up to, yeah, I have to do the prayer. I have the prayer oil that I also put on my hands before I put the gloves on, and just so many prayers, pre prayers, post-op prayers, prayers for myself protection, prayers for anybody around me protection, just protection, protection prayers.
And I think that is good that you say that because I think a lot of people are very fascinated by being a healer, right?
Hmm.
But they don't realize what goes into being a healer.
Yeah,
And they forget and neglect themselves and prayer and just intention setting and all of that. There's a purpose behind all of it. And we can't skip that part because
I met
otherwise we take on those ailments, right?
I met one cord cutter before, and in my entire ex was spiritual, and I remember he told me one thing was, uh, whenever I do the cord cutting, go in as you clean and come out as you clean. So
Mm.
when you're working spiritual, go clean. When you're leaving, also come out clean. So you don't dirty any your way in, your way out.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you're not taking anything with you.
Yeah.
I
And for other
remember
people too.
he was like an African healer. His name was like Judas.
Yeah.
Judas. So he was like very experienced. So
Yeah.
he learned a lot. He was doing by donations that day when he was there at the expo. And he had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, but he saw Jason and he was like, huh, you do what I do? And he's like, you're my last person. And then I don't know what happened over there, but he was gone for a long time. So they probably teacher to student, because he's years in the
Yeah. When I
experience.
got there, he was already packing up, and he was like moving things. He wasn't looking at me, and I'm just like, "Is it okay if I do one with you?" And he's like, "No, no, no, I'm leaving." And he he looked at me. He's like, "Oh,
It's you.
okay. You're my last one. Come sit here." And I'm just like, "You sure?" He's like, "It's already too late. Sit down." It already happened. You're 30 rolling. It's too late. You're in the roll. And he took
But
extra time. He there were some techniques that I don't even understand, and I was asking him questions. He was putting his hands through my eyes, if that makes any sense. He had it
interesting. Mm-hmm.
on there, but it was like somebody was massaging inside my brain in a way where if he was like going in through any negative emotions, taking it out, and after that, and he looked so tired, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And he just like, "Yeah, I just have to go." He told me that how he works is very similar to my grandma, but he takes in people's stuff and he absorbs it like a sponge.
Yes.
He has a
Yeah.
limit,
he,
like everything.
oh, so he absorbs it and then transmutes it,
So
basically.
he goes to the
Mm.
ocean, but he also told me that he purges into the ocean. So he's like
Oh,
hardcore.
Ah. Okay, so that's
That's
his.
a lot of work, but he does what he does, and I was there, and yeah, it's like once in a lifetime experience for me, I would say.
I'm like, but we pray every like for us, ours is like we need protection
Yeah.
before, during, and after. So because
Mhm.
we share like the same spirit guide, if like people like if clients come over to like our place, we try to take like 10 minutes before they hear and we just kind of like write down whatever we hear, whatever we pick up. And that's like when we're like, we start prepping, like, guides, angels, please, give us high intuition,
Mm.
protect us. They come and they start off with a meditation and we pray against some more, like, hey, may you be of help.
Mhm.
And then we start, and during it, we're still asking for help and protection because things are coming out and we're just like, Archangel Michael, come and clean. And we're seeing stuff come out. And then at the end, there's more prayers and sometimes forgiveness prayers. And yeah, and I used to touch people without gloves. And I was like Veronica said, right? It was my ego back then that I'm like, oh, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay. I don't need to really like cleanse myself because I know, it was like my young ego. But then I started to feel really heavy.
Mm.
And I was like kind of like out of the norm. And then one of what's Dr. Siva, he's a very prominent figure in like pranic healing. He looked at me and he's like, your hands are very dirty. He's like, why are you using your hands? He's like, use a tool. He's like, and he went, and he's like, what are you doing? Your hands, if they're dirty, you absorb it. He's like, you only have one pair of hands. He's like, use this, because he had like a tool. He's like, use this. But it wasn't my style because there's different tools for everybody. But then that's when like crystals are
Mm.
really great extensions. And then we specifically wear gloves if we're gonna physically touch somebody.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I do have to wear gloves and I don't touch somebody, it's because think of like their body. They're so congested that the aura is so dirty that again, it happens very rarely. They have to come in like looking real bad. Then that's when I would like put my gloves, even if I'm not touching them. So we use gloves as like a physical barrier and like oil.
And it's a very symbolic barrier too. I know for me, what I would have to do after everything that I would do, I would like physically have to go wash my hands. I
Yeah.
would and pray as I'm removing, all of that and, make the what is has come from my hands be transmuted into the water and um and then if there wasn't anything there, obviously the sun or even create a portal on the ground of fire, right? Because fire is one of the strongest ones. And then I would send it to that. And I would always try to have like some kind of water around so that I would send to the water so that, they like water, things like water, because it's such a high vibrational thing. So yeah, those were always kind of like my things when I would just be talking to somebody sometimes. You feel it. You feel
You absolutely do.
you feel and it's very interesting. You feel sometimes dirty and you haven't even touched anything, right? That will make you dirty.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's been one of the hardest ones you guys have done as a team? Like which one is like one where you're just like, oh my God, like that was a brutal one.
You had your experience, but same person, different experience.
Yeah. So
same person? Oof.
Yeah, I will never forget.
Yeah.
I don't like using the word exorcism because there's so many like connotations.
Yeah.
But sometimes if like people's energies are down, kind of like if you're sick, you're more susceptible to getting sick, right? So it's the same thing with energy when people are kind of like low, stuff can easily get attached to them. So I mean, so we had this client, they had come before, right? So they're like older Latina ladies, so they're not here to F around. They're not like a teenager trying to like, joke with like straight up.
I'm here for help, help me.
So I remember we had cleaned her maybe like once before, but she had come back like months later because she wasn't feeling well. And we're doing a regular cleaning. My sister's there, I'm cleaning, Jason's there. And after an hour, sometimes people kind of like fall asleep when they tend to like go on a spiritual journey. we're like, hey, let's call her Kelly. I'm like, hey, Kelly, like it's time to wake up, like come back to your body. Nothing. And I'm like, okay, like, it's okay to come back to earth, come back to your body. She's like not moving. She's alive, but she's not moving. And I was like, I look at my sister and I'm like, come help me out. Like she's not listening to me. And my sister tries to be like, hey, Kelly, it's time to wake up. Wake up. And her feet were able to move, but her eyes wouldn't open.
Mm.
She's moving, but she's like, her eyes are like not opening. And I'm like, okay, this is really weird. I'm like, is this a medical condition? But I was like, no, we've met her before. She doesn't have any. Long story short, she she can't open her eyes. We get her to stand and she's walking, but she is unable to open her eyes. And she's kind of like, she looks like a zombie, dude. And we're like, I was like, what the fudge is happening? Like, she's not coming back to her body. And it's already an hour and a half in.
Mm.
Okay. She's not coming back. And I was like, what is happening? And my sister's like, okay. She's like, I've seen this before. She has something that went inside because she was out and she didn't want to come back. And when people don't want to come back, I mean, it's a hard word to say, but they tend to be suicidal because they don't want to be here on earth. So her spirit was out here refusing to come back to her body. So guess what? Hey, you got a vacant body. Things are going to happen. And we have to call my mom. Like, when big guns come in, that's when like something's happening.
Yeah,
and
your mom called me.
And then so it's four of us trying to get this lady to come back to her body. And she, again, they're not they're not messing around with you because they're older, like serious Latina ladies, and she's walking and she's talking like some weird, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, is this a spirit? That was my first time ever something like an exorcism. I don't like using it, but just to give you like an idea.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like a little bit panicky because I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like my mom, Jade, and Jason were there with her. And I was just kind of like the messenger, like, you want water? You want towels? Because it was so out of my element. And I will never forget this. Because again, she was like, she finally got to open her eyes, right? But when she was talking, you know how you see it in movies? People are like, when there's something in them, like their voice is completely different.
Yeah.
She was talking and it was like, oh, like, and she was like, it just wasn't her. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And I remember I was standing in an arch of a doorway with no door. And my sister had a bucket in front of her because the lady kept vomiting nothing. Like, and she was like, my sister said she was like throwing up like spiritual gunk. And so she was just like hanging over like this big, like Home Depot orange bucket, like, and you're me. Okay. So you're looking at this person and I'm the lady. And I just remember she was like throwing herself over like the bucket. And then she like horror movie, man, like not even she just like lifts her eyes and looks at me like that straight in the face. And I knew in that second, whatever was there was trying to intimidate me. Because that was I'm not gonna lie, right? I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm brave. I was scared as fuck. But as soon as I saw that, like looking at me, trying to like intimidate, and she's on the floor and I'm standing up. So that looks like, I realized it was trying to intimidate me and I lost all my fear. And then the four of us were like, we were just praying. And she, after like 2 hours and a half, she finally came back to her body. I was afraid that we were going to have to call 911 because the shop closed at 7 and it was already like almost 10.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, we're going to have to call the hospital because this person is like not okay. And then she finally came back and she had no idea what happened. And again, she's come before and there was, because we always have to look at holistic, right? Like, is there an actual illness? Is it like body? Is it physical? There's nothing in her or like her history or like medical history that was like, hey, this person has like dissociative disorder or like bipolar or whatever, all of those things. So that was for me. So I don't know. Yours was different because I was in and out. I was
same day when she was in the bucket, I was behind her holding her.
Oh yeah.
So from my experience, her mom left me, her sister left me.
They were scared.
Yeah, they all left me because they're like, yeah, this is like too much than we pay for. So it's like, you're the only one around here, so you're gonna have to take care of it. They told me, hey, just like kind of hold her so she doesn't fall, right?
Because she was going like this. Here, you can hold me because they
I
need to
was
see
like,
visual.
I was going like this, like
Oh
no,
my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Like
I was
that,
holding her
bro.
like that, and then
She was strong
she's like
too. She's
what?
a small
She's like
lady.
5'2", 5'3", less than 150. Man, I felt like I was holding a quarterback,
Oof.
and she just dry heaving, and I'm just holding her, and then at one time she stopped dry heaving, and then she just started laughing, and I'm just holding her. But each laugh that I felt, because I'm like behind her, right, holding her
Locked
like
in.
this, it was like it's like when you get that bad gut feeling in your stomach when you're in the wrong place, wrong time.
Yep.
It just felt like that every time it laughed. And I'm just like, oh, it's trying to scare me, but I'm not scared. And then she started laughing. And then she speaks no English. Okay. And even if she was trying to speak English, I would know because she had an accent. Um, no accent. And then she just starts laughing and then she kind of looks at me like that. And then I don't know how this is like anatomy wise possible, but her chin touched my chin.
Oh,
While she's like
dang.
holding her like that, and while her chin was touching me, and she's like, "Do you feel that?" Like normal English, and I'm just like, "What?
Oh.
What do you feel?" Because like you're not her, Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Does it's not important? And she's like, "Do you feel that?" And then when she said that, I felt that gut, but it was like all that little that I was feeling was like punch in the gut.
Mm.
It's like trying to scare me, like, hey, I control this body, so it can happen to you. And she's like, I think you should, and she's like, just let me go. And I'm just like, no, it's like, you need to leave this body because it's not yours. And then she just started laughing again. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
you're
won't
not
forget the laugh.
important. It's like, with love and light, you're nothing. You're nothing. And I was like trying to like provoke it in a way so he can leave. Um,
Mhm.
and then she started driving again. And then she came back and she's like, she's just like, yeah, she was just like lost. And then her sister came, grabbed grabbed
Oh
her by
yeah,
the
yeah,
chin like
yeah.
this with her hand. And she's like, I'm tired of this. You need to leave this body now. And then she's just like, it's like, but she doesn't want to come back in Spanish. I don't know what he's saying.
Wow.
But she was just like, you need to leave this body now. And then she fainted. And when she fainted, man, she was so heavy. I went forward with her, and then her chest hit the floor, and I also hit my head on the floor, and I'm like, what just happened? And she's like out, she's like going like this with her knees on the ground, and she eventually woke up. Her eyes were so red. The whole place smelled like stomach acid,
Oh.
and her I was holding her hair and I can still smell her hair. Her hair smell like embalming fluid.
Oof.
Like that person when they use that chemical. I only
Yes.
smelled it in like what biology class, frog dissection. But I smelled it so strong in the mid of her hair. And I was like, oh, that's what death smells like. I was like, dear death. And then after that,
Hmm.
I was like, that's got to be my number one heaviest because it was like 3 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we saw her after. So she came many times after and she was like, okay.
And she was very embarrassed to come into the shop after that
Because we told her because
because
she had no recollection of what
Yeah.
happened.
She wouldn't know, especially if she wasn't her in her body and she was off somewhere else, right?
But
Yeah.
that was my first time encountering that. Now if it happens again, like we're fine. Like again, that was probably like 2 months after I was like, God, it's real. So I was like, this is some scary shit. But
Mhm.
or like you said, like once you kind of encounter, like it's awe and we feel grateful to experience it. But I feel like I've told you, I've had stuff thrown at me now at this point.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
spirits try to scare me. There was a client we had a month ago when we were cleaning it, like the spirits, like they or whatever you want to call them, like the energies there as they're coming out. There was one last month with a client that I usually don't like to understand what they're saying. I choose not to waste my time. But I hear them coming out, and when they come out, to me, they sound like they're trying to
Mhm.
talk. I was like, I'm not curious. Like, I don't want to know what you're saying. He hears everything. Like he understands everything. But there was one last month where as it was coming out, they're so funny to me. It was like, where is your God? Bring your God now. Like, right, trying to like scare me, like, where's your God now? They just make me laugh. I don't think they realize the irony of like the more they try to scare me or like intimidate me, the more they help me believe in God. Because I'm like, how can a spirit be real and say all of these things, but like a higher power not be real? So they don't realize it. But every time that happens, and they're like, call your God, or like, I don't want to leave this body. I'm like, you guys are just helping me. Like, that's why I love it. I'm like, they just make me laugh. So,
Yeah, I mean, I hear some stuff. I
you,
ignore 100% of it. Only when it's helpful, I try to listen, but they're just very like provocative.
they can
Um,
be.
Right.
they
Right.
want to make other people know that they're there, which is
Right.
so much attention seeking, and they use that to manipulate energies for people like us too who can hear. Once they know you can hear, they go all in. They put their chips in everything that I can to provoke you and what you know and things like that. Um, she hears it, but I understand it.
Yeah, 100%. I
Sometimes they speak another language, but like I can understand it for some reason. I don't know why. A lot of the times I feel like their emotions. So
Mhm.
of that week, sometimes I smell things. If they ate pork, I would smell lard or bacon frying. Um, Sometimes, I smell stomach acid because they've been like throwing up or they haven't eaten. Um, Things like that. Anything that stays in your body for more than a week, I think I can, smell it. See things. I mean, like I see a lot of things. So when I'm taking things out, sometimes, I smell like different body odor. Sometimes it's just like they don't want to leave, so they try to come back after I take it out. And I'm like, no, stop. Go over there.
You leave.
Uh,
it's a great discernment for us because right, I choose not to understand sometimes. And I don't see it like Jason. So it when the spirits are coming out, we feel the wind. And sometimes when our guide comes or like angels, the wind we also feel. So the only way I'm able to discern if it's a good energy or like a bad energy is by how it smells.
Oh.
So
Hmm.
when it's not a good one, what I've noticed is like it smells bad. It either smells like sewer. I've had like the smell of like hot breath, trash. Like it feels like
Hmm.
stinky
Mm.
hot
Bad
smell.
breath.
Yeah, it's just like shuko is like this. It just smells dirty,
Hmm.
and it's like going through, and I'm like sometimes it smells like really bad breath.
Hmm.
It's like when I smell it, I'm like, this gotta go. Or like when we're cleaning people out and like the dirty energy comes out, it doesn't smell like fart, like because you would know a person if they farted. It just
Yeah.
smells dirty. So we always like when we smell it, I'm like, but that's how at least that's how I differentiate because he can see, and I don't think I'm ready to see in detail. I've seen shadows and stuff, but I'm not to the full detail as this guy.
I mean, I'm used to it, so it's just like if you're not a good, then get out. Uh, I I don't try to like talk to them or all I say is like, hey, like this is a place of God or this is a spiritual place that this is not your home you can reside to. Please leave. Please leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
help
What?
them. Do you help them to move on? Like, do you help them to like? Do you point them in a direction to go, or is it just kind of like leave this place?
Oh.
Uh, it depends. Sometimes when I do know who they are or what they know, I do. But most of the time, sometimes there's like other portals that people open up.
Yep.
And we don't know what they're doing. So sometimes they come downstairs or they go upstairs or they go through the walls and they're like, oh, this is a new place. Maybe I can stay for a little bit or a couple of days, like hotel, motel. So I'm like, no, you gotta go.
Yeah, we have to use
Yeah.
discernment all the time for every
Yeah.
client. Um, people say spirits, but they can be like energies that kind of just clump up if like people have trauma and then it like stays in the
Yep.
body. And sometimes we have like neutral spirits, like women who have lost children. We don't know, of course, but we read it and then the less we know, the better. So when we pick up that there is like a loss of life, we wake them up and we're like, hey, we picked up and they confirm it. And then if they're ready and if we have their permission, then we actually together um, with the Archangel Chamuel, we kind of like grab the energy and kind of like bless it to its next journey.
Right.
Because even if you were pregnant for a day, doesn't matter if you kept it or not, doesn't matter choice, that's not the point. But even if you had it for a day, that's still a cell. So a cell still contains energy.
Yep.
So even though physically it's gone, the energy stays and it's neutral, which means it's not bad for you, but it's not good for you. So we have to take it so it can be blessed onto its next journey. So
Yeah.
we have to use discernment all the time. We have to figure out, is this a negative energy that has to be like purified, like that has to be just taken out? Is this a family member that's hanging around that just
Mm.
needs us to be like, hey, like follow Archangel Michael? Was this a loss of life that was scared to move on? Like we have to use it all the time for every single client because it is never the same.
Yeah, I believe that there's so many attachments that can happen and at any point in time, right? When you're a little kid, you can have something attached to you, you not even know that it's yours or that it's not part of, that it's you, it's really not you, it's
Yeah,
something that has attached to you for, whatever reason. And, children are so open to things and they sometimes just want to help entities or energies and they get things attached to them.
and that's why cord cutting is important because you can get these at any time. We're human beings.
Mhm.
People can go through different traumas. So let's say I have like a really traumatic experience with a person. Maybe I don't see them or maybe they've passed, but you still have that cord or that like negative energy that's still there that has to be cleaned off. Maybe you went through a sexual trauma, and even though it wasn't a person, it was still an experience that's like you have to get rid of it. There's ancestral cords, there's cords of like emotional, mental, physical. You could have had an injury, you had an accident, and wow, your arm, you were in a cast and now it's good to go, but there's still energy and trauma that's there. So there can be, we think of it as like a holistic, right? If you have an injury, you can have a emotional trauma, right? Maybe you're afraid to ride a car, right? And you never can go to the freeway again. And so that builds cords over time, and people have them for a really long time. And that's when Jason comes in. If it's fresh, I got you. But we people who are like 80 years old and they've had a cord, we're like 3 minutes into meeting them, and our spirit guide is like, oh, hey, this person was sexually assaulted when they were 8, and they're 80 years old now.
Oh boy.
How do we approach this person who we don't even know the name? And it's like, oh, hey, like, you know, whatever we're told is for a person's healing, but they had this whole cord their whole life. And emotionally, when we like told them, like they healed, but it was still like just like
It's
that
still
last
there. Yeah.
physically great. Your physical body is great. Your emotional body, great. Mental, you got therapy, great. But then you also have the spiritual body. So you must take care of all. So
Yeah.
cord cutting, for those that are listening, wherever it is, I recommend it because we all go through different kinds of traumas, people, sometimes ancestral that you don't even ask for, but
You get it.
Yep, you
cord
get it.
cutting
Yeah,
will
and I
always.
think that one thing that I think females don't realize, and even males, is your sexual partners.
Oh,
That that is one of those things that people don't think about because that's the point where you're so connected,
It's very
right?
powerful energy.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful energy that people don't realize that if you went through a relationship and it wasn't great or whatever it was, right? You do need to take care of yourself and not, spiritually to remove whatever energies were there and even, you know, clean and cut and end that relationship that way, versus just physically just leaving the person, right? So
Because
those are
even if
one of the
you still can have those cords. Even
exactly.
that's
Ex-
so we have
yeah,
a
it's one.
Do you
Yeah,
guys
I think
do you guys ever get called to clean residences? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
called.
yeah.
Um, well, they this was a different one. Their wife was kind of spiritual, but their husband wasn't. Ultimately, I gave her a whole prayer and what to do, and I told her it is what it is. If you need us, just call us. She was like 100% sure. 3 days later, she tells me that her husband woke up 3 a.m. His eyes were bloodshot. Slowly turned his head towards her, and he said, "I do not give you consent or permission to have them here clean this house." And then after he said that, he just went, well,
What?
morning of that day, they were just arguing back and forth, like, no, I don't want them here. I don't want them here. And she asked him, "Do you remember you saying this to me at 3 and 4 in the morning?" He says, "I don't know what you're talking about, but I changed my mind. I don't want them here."
And this was a place from what she told us that they had seen a lot, and the
Mhm.
husband even was like a skeptic, also had confirmed, like, hey, yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know what it is, but they were like again, like when you see stuff move, that's when you're like the mind can't really like lie.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
respect people's wishes, so he changed his mind, which is okay, but
We might get a call from the same person. We don't know, but
we've done land cleaning before. That
oh,
was
yeah,
tough.
we went to this place. It was like
Hesperia.
Hesperia, and we were told to clean the house, and then when we got there, it was just a land,
Mm.
all land of
that's a lot
yeah,
because that could carry a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
had like they had like old cars in the lot, and
Huh,
people
interesting.
that was driving in that, and they were trying to fix it, and I was there, and we were doing it at like almost midnight too, so it was like even worse. And after we were like, oh, we want to give up, but our guys told us like, if you leave like that, then the whatever bad juju will be carried on to you too, because you
Oh.
chose. So if you're here,
Go.
like, like I believe in you go in as you clean and you come out as you clean. So you better finish the job
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
finish it good. And when we finished everything, it was like the whole place was smoky because we burned whole tree trunks of Palo Santos and sage. Me and her sister, we both saw like it's hard to explain, but the smoke became like a bird. And
Uh,
it's the shape of a bird. And that's when we knew like, okay, we can leave now. And then yeah, we
Yeah.
left. But that was
it, those houses and stuff are pretty interesting in terms of the energy that can be stored there, right? From whatever happens, traumas, crazy things, and depending on how old the land is or how old the house is, there can be a lot in some of these places. A lot of stuff. And it could be, for a lot of people, it could be scary. Like I have a friend of mine who's from Baltimore, and she would always tell me about this thing that she saw, and she only saw it when she felt it in her grandma and grandpa's house where she used to live. She could feel it watching her, and she would see it in her dreams, but only when she was getting ready to go back to this place. And she would see it over and over and over again. And she would tell me about it. And this last time, it was right before Christmas, and she was going, and she goes, I felt this. I felt it. It knows I'm coming. And I'm like, understand, it knows you're coming. And I had this feeling like I had to give her one of my crystals, right? And I just gave it to her, and I said, wear this, but you need to talk to your family. You need to talk to your family, and you guys need to go over there, and you need to confront it. You need to deal with it, right, as a family. And so she was afraid that her family was going to think that she was crazy, and she was afraid that they were going to think she's, you know, something's wrong. But when she started talking to them, they all experienced something like that in that house. And so they all went together They got the Palo Santo out. They were really walking, walk through the house, cleansed it all. And she said that it felt so good because they all did it together, right? All of them together. And so there was no room for this, whatever the energy was, to continue to stay there. So she comes back and she says, Carlos, I shit you not. I take your necklace off and I put it down. Next thing you know, it flies down onto the ground and cracks in half. And I said, yep, there it is. The energy that we put into that crystal helped do its job.
I mean, that's why, like you said, it's important, right, for people to know they're like not alone, because in the whole family shared and we're like, oh, it's not just me imagining, right? Or there was like support and resources for them to be like, okay, yeah, we got to do something. It's not just my imagination.
Yep.
Right.
Which was
and then
pretty
cases
interesting.
like that could be like ancestral things that needed to be taken care of together as a family. Yeah. Once you communicate about it and not being afraid about communicating about what you see and feel and all that kind of stuff.
It's cool to have a community.
Yeah. So when you said the stuff about crystals, it reminded me of that, right? Because before I gave it, I put energy into that crystal, right? Going, okay, here's something, but that's what they're kind of meant to help you with. They're tools to be able to help you, so layer. Yeah, another layer. It's basically another layer, right? Your scalpel.
I'm glad now that I'm open, right? I'm glad I have people like, I mean, you guys, my mom, my sister, Jason, because it's not like, oh, it's just my imagination, when we're all kind of like experiencing or seeing like different pieces to the same puzzle. It's kind of like, oh yeah, it just kind of like reconfirms that what you're going through is like, it's real, right? It's not like it's your imagination, or some people do have illnesses and it's very valid, right? And that can be like
100%.
But for like us, right, we don't happen to have those. It's just always reassuring, and again, it helps us too, because I'm like, did I hear that right? So I don't know if I've been hearing our spirit guide. I don't know if you could understand what it was saying. I could hear it.
Our spirit guide?
Whatever was here.
Just now?
Like multiple times. Oh, it wasn't good. Oh, okay, never mind.
No, we gotta clean the place.
Oh, never mind.
Costco.
Oh yeah, I was there.
Like 30 minutes before we started this, and we felt really heavy there. It's because you're going there with people without knowing that they have attachments and things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sensitive too. So when I was there, I was feeling what she was feeling, and then we gotta cleanse the house.
Because I was like, I mean, I wasn't paying attention, but I could hear like next to us, and I was like, is there a spirit guide? I don't know, because I'm talking, so I just wanted to make sure. So not okay.
No.
And that happens. I think that's the thing that our listeners have to understand is when, they take this, if they choose to take something like this on, right? Mm-hmm. It is constant work. It is not something that, is lax. And I think how things are romanticized, right? Ooh. A lot. So I want to talk about that. What you guys think about that, how being a shaman, being, curandera, being a healer, being a reader, whatever, right? How it's romanticized, but the core of it is constant work and being aware of what's happening to not only to what's there, but also to you, and how you take care of business in that sense, right? So yeah, I really want to get that out there, because this is not easy.
Oh, we gotta put in work.
You said you have a choice, which is important, right? Some people, you don't have to just be a good human in this lifetime and do as good as you can. That's like, basic enough. But if you choose to pursue it and you're like curious, that's great. But there's a lot of learning involved. That learning sometimes can come really hard. You have to like protect yourself a lot. It's always a part of your everyday. You can try to tune it out. But like, for example, when I went to Costco, like when I'm at places and like, I know my body well, when I feel like my anxiety push up and I'm like, that's not my regular anxiety. I'm like tapping my foot and I feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like, it's a spirit. So then I like turn and I don't see them, but I can once you're like in your body, I feel them and I start praying. And then that's when I hear the as they're like leaving. So when you don't understand, right, the first time you're feeling like, oh, I feel something kind of weird, I don't know what's going on. A lot of the times you're sensing stuff in
Mm-hmm.
your everyday, but it's through experience that you get to know, hey, this is like my emotions versus, hey, this is a spirit or this is an energy or you're picking up on someone else. That takes like a little bit of learning. But that's why it's important to always be grounded.
Yes.
Because when you are grounded, you will know when it's your emotions, because maybe you're going through a hard time versus, oh my God, this person's really heavy and they kind of took me out of like my peace. So that's important
Yeah.
to know. Discernment comes when you are grounded, and what you feel is not always, I'm a mental health advocate, but sometimes what you feel and what you're going through is not just your mental body. There is a spiritual, there is a physical and an emotional body. So again, we say take care of all. So I love
Do you guys do any work in dream state when you guys are in dream
no
state?
like and it's like spiritual work in the dreams.
uh, do we?
I remember one time, but I don't really nowadays, thank God I'm just asleep. But it happened to us a couple of times, at least for me, because I don't know what you dream. It was at the shop where I dreamt that it was that after hours, I remember randomly one day I dreamed that it became like a hospital. Like I
Mm.
saw things moving around, and I was like, it felt like a movie set in my dreams. And then I just remember that spirits were coming to our shop in my dream after hours to get like surgery and help. So that was like one of the vivid ones. After that, I don't remember because maybe I do, but I'm just in deep sleep. Um,
Well, yeah, just dream about the same thing except it's like environment, settings, usually a house, and I'm with her family, I'm with my family. We're all kind of together, but it's like spirituality in a way, and
Mm.
we just every time it's always the same, different house, different setting, but I feel like at home. I open the doors, there's lines of people outside waiting to see different people. Me, her
the
sister,
dream.
her mom, my brother. It's like
So
people that I
random.
don't know and I don't even know their faces, but they look familiar. And I
Hmm.
go, oh, I might be in the alternate reality or I might be in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
But
possible. It's possible, my man. It's very very interesting. Yeah, because I
And
mean, I wanted to kind of get a sense for like as you start going as you're really deep into this journey, have you developed other additional gifts that are outside of the normal I wouldn't, the average stuff that you guys do on a day to
Carol's.
day. I normal. I look
What's
everything's
normal to
it's
you?
all normal now. I mean, you know what I mean. So is there anything, or is this kind of like your guys' specific focus for now?
Ooh, it's
ooh,
changed.
yeah, it's always changing. We don't
Mm,
know it's what we feel comfortable with, and then it kind of evolves from there. And then we all of our senses that we have, they also get heightened in a way. So we can also become like intuitive too in
Yeah.
that sense. It's always different. We don't know.
So for me, remember, I learned like through my hands, like pranic healing, and my sister was like, okay. So I learned how to just kind of like clean energy. And then I started to learn how to feel for dirty energy. And then I started reading people. The first time I read somebody, they came in and my sister was like, hey, like, let's meditate before they come to see if we get any information. And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm not as good as you guys are, but I'm just gonna close my eyes. I'm like, I wasn't believing in God back then, right? I was like, oh, but I'm just gonna sit here. And I was like, I'm just gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna wait for them to do their thing. And then I remember I saw this lady's lymphatic system in my head. And I'm like, that was really random. I'm like, does she have an infection? I was kind of like half joking. And we cleaned her, and I was like, I was really shy because when you're starting, you are like, man, it's like my intuition, right? Like, am I just like, is it just logic or is it actually something like, higher knowledge? And I remember I was like super shy. I was like, hey, when I was cleaning you, I cleaned your lymphatic system. Do you have an infection? And she's like, she gasped and she takes out of her bag a UT, like you know how like they make you pee in those little like they
Mhm.
pick up the lab. She told us that she was dealing with an infection, but the doctors didn't know what it was. So she had 24 hours to pee in the cup. So she was gonna go home after us and she was gonna pee so they could pick it up. And that was the first time I was like, oh, what the? That was kind of weird. And then right, once you get comfortable and you're like, okay, now I'm cleaning people, I was starting to do like the medical MRI. So I was able to see people's bodies and kind of like see where the cords are, which always kind of like tended to like match with illnesses. And then from there, I started to help out with mediumship. And then from there, I do something like crystal surgery came afterwards, you know, because I was able to see what parts of the organs needed help. And then I was able to do crystal surgery. And then something recently that I was just starting to do maybe 3 months is something called the womb cleaning. So
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
with like the ovaries, intestines, kind of like that lower area for women. It's like half energy cleaning, but then it's like half where I have to like mechanically massage stuff out and it goes out between your legs, which is a really crazy experience because I have people who are not spiritual who are like, oh, it's gonna help my digestion. Ah, fuck it, it's a massage. I can feel it. I can, you know, it's like, and they do it. And every time I'm doing the womb cleaning, I always feel balls of congestion. So as I'm like going through, I feel the ball and then I push it and I ask them, do you feel that? And they're like, oh, yeah, what is that? And then I guide it with them to like push it out between their legs. And I've had people think they're peeing and there's no pee that's coming out. I've had people's stomach inflate 4 inches, which is abnormal. And they just like, it floats up and then it just like goes through their legs. Some of the women have felt the balls going down. So they feel like almost like giving birth for some, which even the people that are not per se like spiritual, we're like at an expo. It's like 15 minutes. They come out and they look at me and they're like, I don't know what that was. And they're kind of just like in shock. So it's people's first spiritual experience. So I feel
Oh.
very privileged to do that. But kind of like things come. And so Jason's
Yeah.
was the same, right? He just started seeing stuff and he's like, I don't know what to do. And now,
Mine's just like cord cutting relationship and cord cutting with like people who have passed away, like we talked about. And that moved on to black magic, white magic removal. It's like people say people say nasty things. We call them black magic level 0. Even I used to do it before where they're like, oh, he flipped me off during the traffic. I hope his tires pop. That's, you're manifesting bad upon people. So sometimes that,
Mhm.
and I kind of help people remove that. And then there are anything above level 0 is just ritualistic,
yeah.
Yeah.
From there, I just like, okay, well, I see a seal. I don't, study anything like that. I just know that it's there. And like, oh, that's weighing you down. Or I see it. We're gonna do some prayers, and I always have to ask them, like, are you ready to get rid of this today? I've only had one time experience where a person said, "Oh, you see that? Oh, leave it there.
They're like, I don't want
You don't want anybody to
and
touch
we
it."
respect.
And
So
yeah, and
You're like, that's
right.
my homie right there. We cool.
Right.
yeah, he was like, "Oh, that's my friend who passed away. He left it there. Don't touch
Oh.
it."
Oh.
So
Okay.
Interesting.
being respectful. Do
Free
anything.
will.
Yeah. Connection and attachment, right? That sometimes, yeah, people want to keep. I had that happen to me before, like with one person, as I was in their womb, their abdomen, I could see like almost vines that have grown into the womb, a very, very, very thick. And I asked her if she wanted me to clean that and help her remove some of that. And she's like, no, I'm not ready for that. I'm like, okay, okay. Even though it was really had overgrown, right? And had been so long and so long there, very heavy, heavy lifting. And until this day, they're, it's weighed them down, but it's choice, right? It's a choice that people
Yeah.
make. And I think that's the other thing. And I want to bring up that, um, you never go into somebody's space unless you have their.
Yeah,
100%.
we tell people like, hey, if they're, because people bring their family, you know what I mean? They're like, oh my God, because they met us and they're like, can you do my family? And so we have people drive from San Diego to like Orange County, but we tell them like, hey, if this person says no, it doesn't matter how much money you offer us. We don't work like that. We work karmically, so we're gonna respect the choice of the person.
Mm-hmm.
So even when we're doing readings, and they're trying to be like, hey, tell me about my sister, ooh, we have to ask for consent about her soul. Sometimes we do get the consent, and then other times it's kind of like we're
Nope.
stonewalled. We can press it and like read the record, but we tell people, I'm sorry, but we can't we can't share it. We were not given permission. We can read it, but that's not how we work. We never want to force. So we never do like love spells. You don't know how many times we've had people ask us for love spells.
Jesus. Wow.
And people are free to do what they want, but that is not us. We don't believe in forcing the will of another. We learned from our client last week that she went to some country in like South America and she got a cleaning and they got a baby guinea pig and the shaman grabs the guinea pig and you have your eyes closed and it rubs and kills the guinea pig. Like it pressures it so much because it's like kind of like the egg cleansing until it's dead and then it like opens it and it tells you like what it reads. So culturally, right, different things like that. We don't do that because for us, even animals have a will of their soul.
Right.
One time my cat got lost and I was like, Spirit God, tell me where it is. I know you know where my cat is. And you know what they told me? They're like, he has free will. If he chooses to come back, and if he doesn't, it's okay. And I was like, but why? I'm his mom. And I was so mad. He came back, but it was his choice to come back. So when I learned
that's a good way to look at it. A good way to look at it.
So at least that was the lesson for me. So I don't think we're gonna be doing any guinea pig cleansings over here.
That would be wild, bro.
I think that's the important key takeaway is that for I think sometimes when people are newly starting out, they get so excited and Reiki, pranic healing, whatever modality, and then they go into people's space without asking for permission, and or they do a distance thing or whatever. And my take is like these are beings and even energy beings, right? And they have their own free will. They have a choice, right? But to be effective, they have to be open also to be able to receive that what you give. So I think that's one of the important key takeaways for anyone starting that's new is always ask for permission.
Yeah, and when you go to somebody, I tell people, right, because people have different like beliefs, religions, and it's okay. It's the same being at the end of the day. So I just tell people, whoever you go to for help, ask who they believe in or what they do, ask for their intentions, and if that matches with you, great. If it doesn't match with you, you need to go. So whatever it is to you, it's kind of like just for those people that are going to go get cleanings. Get to know the person, get to know their intentions. Do you feel safe in this place? And do what they do make you feel safe? Like, right? Like we don't do love spells. And if a person wants a love spell, we're not the right people. There's somebody out there that can help you. So that's
if they want to do that, that's okay. That's on them. Yeah.
Which is not to say it's good or bad, because there's many different like cultural backgrounds to. We just tell people we just don't do it. So
Right. Stay away.
Man, Jason, you look familiar, dude. Like I've known you from somewhere. I know you from a time and a place somewhere.
I feel you, man. I don't know. Maybe it's my hair. I don't
know. And were you teachers? Were you friends?
It's the hair across lifetimes, man. I don't know. Somewhere. Yeah, it's super interesting.
So one thing that I appreciate about both of you guys is that you hold privacy, and privacy is very important.
HIPAA safety medical field, but we do it same thing.
Yeah. And
HR, so
There you go.
complaint.
yeah, and I think for our listeners to know that they run like almost like a physician's office. You run with the utmost privacy, complete respect for the person, full consent, right? And informed consent. So someone knows what they're getting into and what this is. And as you go along, right, you're explaining everything to them. And I think that's so important because this way someone knows what's happening and understanding it. And it's almost like that psycho spiritual education that is going on in their cleanings, which is so important so that they don't repeat the same thing again, or they're more understanding of what their body really feels like without this attachment and when something wants to encroach. So I think that's one of those things that stood out so much for me with you guys was that. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, before we went and our podcast, because I think that's a highlight for me of you guys and for our listeners to kind of understand why you guys do that way.
Yeah.
It's because very, very big privacy, things we hear, things we see
are
sensitive. I mean, we're talking big time abuse in every way.
Sexual abuse, mental abuse.
Within families too. I don't think anybody will be okay opening up unless they feel like they want to pass on the message for people who are going through a similar thing. But we talked about privacy, HIPAA.
We do two things. We tell people ahead of time any information that we're allowed to know. It's because your soul gave us permission. It is for your healing.
Yeah.
I tell people the same cheesy joke. I'm like, I'm not here to hear your social security. I don't care about your identity. But I tell them, but sometimes you will get to know a little bit of private things. And I just let them know we got permission for it. Or sometimes people come in families or groups or couples. And we have to be like, hey, I'm sorry, but we have to separate you. One, because we don't want that to dirty the other person, right? Because you're connected. And other times it's because it's private. We've had couples of we separate them and we talk to the partner who's with us and we're like, hey, for example, one of them 2 weeks ago, we're like, hey, we know you cheated on your wife, we were told, and we had to separate them because we had to let them know that information because they had to do some forgiveness prayers. And of course, right, you're like, oh my God, are they going to tell my wife? They were panicking. We're like, hey, this is for you. You choose what you wish to do with that information. I'm like, our job is not to appease the ego of you or the person you're with. Our job is to help you. And then the way we can help you is through cleaning, crystal surgery, cord cutting, forgiveness prayer. But we always separate people. Veronica, I know when you came to see us in the shop, when we were helping, you guys were separated, you know? That's how we work. So we let people, like you said, know ahead of time how we work. We work karmically and we separate people, even mothers and daughters. We're like, hey, sorry, but you can turn around. Sometimes they're underage. We have the mothers be in the same area, but they turn away. And then when we have to give a message, we still ask that person, even if they're underage, if they want their moms to know or their dads or their families to know. Yeah. We had one who was abused by her husband. We saw fingerprints spiritually all over her body. And her mom had no idea.
Oh.
And so it was one of those where it's hey, she confirmed with us and she was like, yeah, he choked me yesterday. And she was like, my mom doesn't know, but I'm not ready for her to know. And we're like, we respect the will of a soul, even though, of course, this is mother-daughter, she's going through. And so all we could do is work on the spiritual, empower her in the physical body, right? To go to the police, report, all of that. But to this day, I don't know if she told her mom. And it's not for the ego of them. But that's how we work. Privacy is the most important because we're not here to appease the ego.
Exactly. I think that's the best way of putting it. You're not here to appease the ego, and that's really how healers should function, as that to not
For like black magic too, we have people who are like, tell me who's the person that did the black magic. What's your name?
Oh boy.
Who it is. We know, but we know not to say it, and we tell them, is it because you want to heal, or is it for your ego?
Yeah, what do you want to do with that? Like, what are you going to do with that?
But
That doesn't help you. Yeah.
we don't tell people. I mean, very rare instances when our spirit guide and our intuition tells us, hey, this person is like needs to do a specific forgiveness prayer. But most of the time, like you have no idea. People are like, who is it? And they're like obsessed with it. And I'm like, the more they pressure to it, the more I'm like, this is why I cannot tell you. Because you're only gonna all the cords you just cut, you're gonna reattach them because you're trying to. So
Yeah.
I mean, he deals with that more because he does the cords.
I don't tell them it's because, like she said, I'm not here to like give you pleasure by letting you know who basically backstabbed you, or giving you the pleasure to know that you know who did it. Now I have the name. Now I can do the same thing 10 times full, and then karmically it all comes down to us.
Yeah.
So, I say, I'm sorry, like if you're mad that of me not telling you, that's okay. But this is how we work.
We have a responsibility, right?
I have my job, but you also have your job to do.
If we give a gun to somebody who killed somebody, that's on us, right?
Yeah.
Because we gave them the gun.
Right.
Again, we have to use discernment because sometimes it's okay for them to know, but most of the time when we know it's for their ego, we're just like, we're like, oh, sorry, we didn't get the reading. Sorry, it's private. We stretch the truth a little bit because if we tell them like, yeah, we know who it is, they're gonna be like, tell me.
I is better than
So we do have to omit, unfortunately. I wish I could be on, but we do have to be like, hey, sorry, can't read it. But I'm like, but that's not the point. I tell them back like, hey, you just did a lot of cleaning. You're gonna feel great. Go on your journey, like take care of yourself. And then we kind of just bring them back to like be a better human, like take care of yourself. Life is great, life is beautiful. So who cares if this person do you black magic? You already just cleaned that off. Like,
yes, you cleaned it off.
Like you're in your body, you feel so light, you feel so great. Life is wonderful, We just go back to that with them. And then they forget about it and they never ask us again. They never text us about that again. Because
it's the brain that does that. The brain wants to know why, right? Mm-hmm. It's that logical why and who. And I think that's the point where so many people are very vulnerable when they're there, and practitioners take advantage of them by telling them sometimes these things, but and we could do this to this person, and and then
for $250 more.
Exactly. That happens.
They're good. I'm not gonna lie, but it's like, what is the point?
There isn't any.
Cycle. Like I know which is like there are brujos out there who are strong AF, but we're just like, what is the point?
Yeah. Right. It's not your purpose is something different, and something greater and amazing and all that stuff. So before we end, Carlos, do you have any questions, any burning questions?
No, I asked my questions. I thought that was really awesome. And thank you guys for being so open and honest with how you approach your healing. And, the journey's fascinating. And I'm sure we'll have you guys on the podcast again, and you guys will tell us other interesting stories. And you guys will probably have discovered some additional things that you can do, which will be pretty cool too. But I've definitely appreciated it, and I know our listeners will appreciate the stories and kind of how you roll. And
before we go, what final words would you like to impart on our listeners?
What about you?
I was like, I gotta do the mandatory business thing of like, please, you're welcome. Any questions? We are the art of goodness, so you're welcome to follow us, talk to us. But you can.
I'm just like anybody who's out there opening up to spirituality, they're like kind of dipping their foot in and not staying lukewarm. Just know that your time will come if you are waiting, but also if you are wanting to, but you don't have the support is everywhere. You just gotta find it. So, yeah.
One more thing, especially with that. As humans, we can get frustrated, so just take it one step at a time. It's one lesson at a time. Don't try to skip steps. You will get to where you need to go. So don't be like, oh my God, I want to read a spirit now. It's like you will get, but you cannot skip. That is not, you must first do your homework and pass test number one.
Yep. No spiritual bypass.
You cannot cheat. You will repeat the same lesson until you have learned it. That's what I know.
There you go.
Yes, sashay to that. Thank you guys so much for being on this podcast. It was amazing. You guys are always amazing. For our listeners, if you're ever in SoCal, Southern California, that's where Melody and Jason are from and are located. And you guys do various expos, but they can follow you on Instagram. It's is it the Art for Goodness?
Underscore
or
Art for Goodness,
or theartofgoodness.com.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Got a website.
Check
Cool.
out-
Artofgoodness.com.
check out their services, and I promise you won't regret it, because you will get a lot of information that is very helpful and make believers out of unbelievers.